So today we're going to explore how to heal ourselves if we experience pain. And of course, we can look at chronic pain versus acute pain. There are different approaches. And there's not black and white definitions. You have either acute condition or a chronic condition. It's a gamut, it's a spectrum, so to speak. Now, before we go into exploring pain, I want to give a disclaimer, because obviously this is not a medical institution doing the event. It's the Academy of Qidao doing the event. So as you would imagine, we want to make sure that we are on the same page in terms of not assuming that what you're experiencing today is receiving medical treatment. It's for education purposes only. We may offer some health or fitness or other information, but this information is intended for information and education purposes, not for treating or diagnosing diseases. Neither myself nor any one of you can make representations as to the safety of the activities that we're going to be engaging today. And by participating in this clinic, I would like you to assume the responsibility for your experiences and your well-being, and agree to hold me harmless of any concerns that you may have in regard to your health, because this is not intended to be providing medical advice. Now, one of the things that I would love to introduce today is the general idea of how pain affects our body, because it certainly does, doesn't it? How does pain affect our bodies and our quality of life? There is no reason to hide this fact that most of us experience pain to certain degrees at different times in our lives. Some of us experience it on a more chronic basis. Some of us experience pain when we just get injured or hurt. Our relationships and other interactions with other people also may be affected by our feeling of pain. So it's pretty reasonable to accept the fact that we would improve the quality of our relationships if we were not in pain as much as we may be. Now, no matter whether you experience pain today or you experienced it in the past, you probably tried doing something about it. It would probably be fair to say that you tried more than one approach, and some approaches worked better than others. But some approaches that worked really well might have also provided some disservice. Now, that may sound strange. How can pain management provide disservice? Let me put it this way. The most popular reason why people seek medical attention in modern societies is because they're feeling pain. And what do they get when they seek medical attention? They get a lot of medical part, not so much attention part. In other words, they get mostly drugs for pain killing. Pain killing drugs is the number one approach that Western medicine has to offer when somebody complains about pain. And what do painkillers do? They kill the messenger. They literally disconnect your central nervous system from the experience of what your body has to say. In other words, whenever we experience any degree of pain or discomfort in the body, we don't disconnect from the body and feel nothing. We want to learn how to experience our lives fully. And if we want to experience our lives fully, what do we need to do? We actually may need to experience some degree of discomfort and pain if we have ways to deal with it, if we have ways to manage our discomfort. If we don't have ways to manage our discomfort, then of course we will be most likely running to a doctor and asking for painkillers, or they will be prescribing painkillers to us. And what do painkillers do? They literally break the communication feedback mechanism. The body, when it's in pain, is trying to send a signal to the central nervous system. Hey, pay attention here. Something is not working properly. Something is blocked or afflicted or injured. Well, imagine, for example, you are skiing and you experience pain. Should you stop skiing because you're in pain? Possibly, because if you don't, you may actually get injured or severely hurt. If you are a skier, you know that sometimes you ski through pain, but that often also leads to some negative effects. And it applies not only to this particular type of sport, but any kind of activity. If you're disregarding pain, basically trying to block its awareness, not through painkillers, but just by simply diverting your attention from it, it's actually doing the opposite of what the body is asking for. The body is sending the signal, hey, pay attention here. And if you don't pay attention, instead you're diverting the attention elsewhere, you're doing the opposite of what the body was requesting. Now, it's not often pleasant to pay attention to pain. So I want to make a pretty clear statement that not everything that we are going to be exploring in our clinic is going to be a pleasant experience. But it may also give you a way to overcome some of the root causes of pain. It's always much more effective to work with the root causes of issues such as pain, as opposed to just try to mask the symptoms, if you know what I mean. Now, how would we possibly discover the root causes of pain? For example, you may feel stomachache. You don't know if it's just indigestion, or you have an ulcer, or you have a issue with the gallbladder, or you have some other condition that you may not even know what it's called. So how do we find out what the root cause of pain is? There is no way to find it out if we don't pay attention to it. So the number one step is to actually learn how to pay attention to pain, but potentially experience some degree of filtering. In other words, how much pain to experience when you pay attention to it is actually subject to change. How would you change that? You can literally use the mental filter of how much pain you allow to filter through, even though you're focusing on it. It's like looking at the bright light with dark shades on, with sunglasses on. Or if, for example, you ever observed a solar eclipse, you have to wear really dark glasses in order to filter out a significant amount of sunshine, because it's not healthy to stare at the sun directly. But you can actually look at the source of that light, at the star that's always spinning around. So what we do basically is we learn how to create this kind of mental filters to begin with. There are also many other very important approaches that I wanted to share with you. One of them, for example, is something what's similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's not the same. And I will describe in detail what the differences are and how it can actually be used for self-healing. And most importantly, we will switch from using labels that most of us have in our consciousness when it comes to dealing with discomfort, pain, injuries, or other things like that. Basically, most people, and I don't want to assume that you are among them, but maybe it will apply to you. You will feel just in a moment as I'm talking about it. Most people divide health into good health or ill health. So you're either in good health, in other words, you're healthy, or you're ill, and that's bad. Well, this dualistic black and white way of looking at health is actually never correct. I've never met 100% healthy person in my life, nor have I met a lot of people who were completely deathly ill or at the opposite end of the scale. Most people I meet are those who are somewhat healthy, somewhat not so healthy. In other words, it's a gray scale. It's not black and white. What does that mean? It means that we need to stop using those labels, such as good health or bad health. Once we stop using these labels, we have to use something different instead, because otherwise we have a hard time even talking about the subject matter. What do I suggest? Well, I suggest basically developing a new vocabulary that would give us a much more precise awareness of how well we're feeling, and also immediately remind us that it is on the sliding scale, not just flipping a switch, either good health or bad health. Why do we want to do that? It's because this black and white perception of reality is the main cause of human suffering. And I would like you to experience less suffering. I hope you don't mind that. And one of the best ways to eliminate human suffering, literally nip it in the bud, is to actually change the way that we think about labels. Labels are basically certain stereotypical ways of thinking about something that is not necessarily even true, but it just kind of reminds us of some previous associations that we've developed in our minds. And then we no longer relate to the object that the label is attached to. We often will just read the label. It applies to anything. It applies to people. For example, we often think this is a good guy and this is a bad guy. Or it relates to food. Eat this, don't eat that. Or it maybe relates to work. You know, I got a good job or I got a bad job. Or it maybe relates to health, good health or bad health. This is actually an insidious trait of human mentality that we're learning to overcome and replace completely with something much more intelligent. What is that more intelligent approach that would allow us to overcome this black and white dualistic way of looking at things? Well, it is actually energy-based way of discernment. Discernment is the key to wisdom. And when we use energy-based discernment, energy resonance gives us the sense of how much we resonate with this particular food or this particular experience or this part of the body even. And if we focus on that which we resonate with, we experience more flow. And when we experience less flow, that's usually when we focus on things we don't resonate with so much. But this is not black and white. It's just different degrees of resonance, just like, again, on the sliding scale. And this is actually really important. We hardly ever experience perfect resonance, and we never experience zero resonance, because everything that we encounter, we must have resonated with enough to even cross paths with. So we basically deal with a lot of kind of gray areas that we learn to develop a greater sense of precision, discernment, and ability to choose according to how much we resonate with something. Why am I talking about this? It's because I brought up cognitive behavioral therapy. And in the context of that particular approach to pain management, therapists or doctors usually talk about, you realize that negative thoughts or negative emotions, negative experiences cause you stress, and stress makes you more tense, and it causes you chronic pain, or sometimes acute pain. And so Basically, what they say is that you need to get rid of negative ways of thinking, negative emotions, negative attitudes, and replace them with something positive. Do some positive affirmations, think good thoughts, practice gratitude. I don't want to say that it's not workable, but it's definitely based on the rather dysfunctional black and white way of looking at things. And so instead of that, we want to actually look at everything, including ourselves, as energy experiences. We are energy beings, and all our events in our lives are essentially energy processes. So we learn how to relate to everything energetically, and that's what gives us the ability to actually use energy-based discernment. So if I feel, for example, that I have some pain somewhere in my body, let's say the proverbial pain in the neck, what is going on? Well, should I just disconnect from this part of my body and pretend like I don't have any neck pain? That's not going to cause any healing, right? And the only thing that's going to do is basically get me stuck in the head. Because when I disconnect from the neck, well, by default, I disconnect from the rest of the body, and most people get stuck in the head in that case. I don't want to get stuck in the head. I would love to use my entire body and experience life more fully. So instead of disconnecting from this part of my body that hurts, the neck, I actually would want to connect with it more thoroughly and pay greater attention to it. But that is going to give me experience of dissonance because something is not working there. And basically, we have to actually learn how to transform dissonance into resonance. How do we do that? Well, there are several ways. One of the ways is to try to change the experience that we're focusing attention on so that it would resonate with us better. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not easy. When it's not easy, when we don't know what is the cause of this dissonance. In other words, if we don't know why we have pain in the neck, it's hard to change the condition. How would we find out what the cause is? Well, we can simply look at ourselves kind of from bird's eye point of view, or I like the term fly on a wall. What is it that I'm doing that may be causing me neck pain? Of course, everybody would likely point the finger at somebody else. Oh, that person has a pain in my neck. That is certainly a popular way of dealing with it, but it is not the most functional way. If it were functional, then people wouldn't be suffering from this neck pain again. Now, what do we do instead? We learn how to connect with that part of the body and listen to what it has to say. You see, the body is not stupid. The body isn't just trying to cause us discomfort and harm. It's trying to communicate something. When it says, pay attention here, something is not working properly, or something is blocked, or something is afflicted in some other way. It's an invitation to look at it and actually see what is the affliction, what is causing the blockage. In most cases, the energy blockages are the causes of pain, and they're basically caused by tension. It's no brainer. The energy doesn't flow as easily through tense muscles as relaxed muscles. And that applies also to blood flow, to lymph flow. Basically, when you have tension, it's likely that you're going to experience some discomfort, plus limited range of motion, plus you burn energy because tense muscles burn energy, and then you get energetically depleted. And of course, those muscles that hold tension for too long, they start feeling sore. And that soreness is what we experience as pain. Plus also it will create energy blockages, perhaps blocking the flow of energy from reaching some other parts of the body. That's why we're talking about getting stuck in the head, for example, or it can be blocking energy in many other parts of the body that we can explore. But the idea is the principle is that tension is, in most cases, what causes the energy blockage. So how do we deal with tension? Well, we need to understand, first of all, that nobody is doing tension to us. We're doing tension ourselves. Basically, the central nervous system is sending signals to the muscles to contract. Nobody can cause you to tense up. You are tensing up, perhaps in response to other people's actions, words, or experiences that you go through in life. But how we react to these experiences of words or other people's actions is basically the determining factor in how much we tense up. And if we don't react, if we respond instead, do you think you'll be in as much pain? No, because you would be less tense. When you respond, you actually relax instead of tensing up. How do you relax instead of tensing up? You make your central nervous system less agitated, so it doesn't send so many signals of contraction to the muscles. Simple, right? But how do you make your central nervous system less agitated? How do you basically stop reacting and start responding to the experiences in your life? Well, that's the $1 million secret, isn't it? My secret way of doing this, and I don't want to say it's the only way, but it's a very effective way, I have approximately 95% success rate, is developing discernment, identifying what is it that I'm reacting to, and identifying that perhaps it's not the most effective way to react to whatever is happening. A reaction, by definition, is acting against the oncoming forces. Action means you're pushing back or you're resisting emotionally, or if somebody says this is a good thing, you say no, this is a bad thing, or vice versa. How often do we actually have this kind of interactions? And it doesn't even have to be with other people, it can be with ourselves. How often do we feel like, oh, this thing that I thought was good actually turned out to be crappy, or vice versa. Something that I was thinking that this was bad actually turned out to be not so bad. Now, what does it mean? Well, among other things, it means that labels don't work. What was supposed to be good turned out to be bad. In other words, the label actually wasn't providing the true information, or using the popular expression, the map did not match the territory. How often does it happen? Every day. Every day we experience mislabeled information, or basically we realize that our perception of things is not perfect. We misperceive things because we project our ideas on them, or we just simply assume that our labeling is correct, and it almost always isn't. And it also means another thing, that there's no social agreement about labels. Why else would somebody think that this is a good thing and another person would think it's a bad thing? Because people don't agree about labels. Well, if there is no agreement, we can't use them. There is also no perpetuity to labels. In other words, they don't hold true. Even if something was good yesterday, it may not turn out to be so good today or tomorrow. Things change. It's the most constant thing in the universe. And so what we actually have to do is we have to stop labeling things, including our own health, including our own pain. So what do we do then? We become curious. Curiosity replaces judgment. Instead of feeling like, wow, I'm feeling pain and this is just really screwed up and I'm suffering, basically start getting curious. I wonder what's causing it. How long have I been feeling it exactly? Which part of my body is it exactly that I'm feeling this pain in? I wonder what the cause and effect connections are between my actions or my thoughts and this experience that I'm having. Ignorance of the law of karma is one of the most insidious sources of suffering in human life. How do we overcome ignorance of the law of karma, the law of cause and effect? By connecting the dots. In other words, we start identifying what the dots are that connect cause and effect. That's how we identify the root causes of our own ill health, including painful experiences. What's going to happen when you identify the root causes? Being curious, being open-minded, and not labeling things as good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, you basically start experimenting with yourself. And when you experiment with yourself, you're guaranteed to get to learn about yourself a great deal more. And learning about yourself brings about self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is the golden key that unlocks the door to self-mastery. And self-healing, of course, is one of the attributes of self-mastery. If you have self-mastery over yourself, over your health, over your destiny, you can also heal yourself a lot easier. How do I know that? Because I've experienced it many, many times in my life. Obviously, I can't claim that I have 100% self-mastery. It would be preposterous, and I'm not delusional. There's always room for improvement. But I've been very actively pursuing this particular path of self-mastery. And I understand how there are certain milestones along this path. And one of these milestones is the development of self-knowledge that is gained through paying attention to oneself and learning about the cause and effect connections. Now imagine that you have that degree of self-knowledge. Would you be more likely to heal yourself, or would you be still running to doctors and asking them to fix you? Doctors or therapists or physical therapists, you name it. That's a rhetorical question, right? How do we gain self-knowledge? Through observation. We basically have to focus a great deal more attention on ourselves. And as we experience some discomfort or pain, instead of just putting a label, this is bad, we become curious. Interesting, on the scale, where does that fall? How does it relate to how I felt yesterday? Or how does it relate to the way I feel, for example, on the other side of my body? If, let's say, one shoulder hurts, well, how does it compare to the other shoulder? What's the difference between the range of motion of the shoulders? Are there any particular muscles that are actually sore? We were talking about the neck. Well, the same applies to the neck. One side of the neck may feel different from the other side. What's the difference? Can I turn my head equally well in one direction versus another, or tilt it sideways, or move it back and forth, or better yet, move in a circular manner? What happens when I do this? I actually experience something. Maybe I will experience even more discomfort. Well, that is going to trigger another really important key, or I use the term milestone. What's another milestone leading to mastery? Mindfulness. In particular, mindfulness as to the edges of the comfort zone, because beyond the edges of the comfort zone, by definition, is discomfort and pain. If we push ourselves over the edges, it's often our own doing. Of course, we can point fingers at somebody else and say, they caused me this discomfort or they pushed me over the edge. But I don't want to say that it never happens. But in most cases, we push ourselves unwittingly beyond the edges of our own comfort zone. And there are plenty of personal development gurus and teachers who say that we should push ourselves beyond the edges of our comfort zone because that's how we achieve our dreams. Even if it is a relatively simple dream of health and happiness. Well, simple, not always easy to achieve, right? Why is not? Because when you push yourself beyond the edge of the comfort zone, trying to get to the place where you dream of being, you're most likely going to experience discomfort. because as soon as you step across the threshold of your comfort zone, discomfort starts feeling more and more prominent. You basically will be most likely giving yourself grief or causing yourself pain. What do we do? Forget about our dreams? Forget about our aspirations? No. We learn how to do something remarkably different from what everybody does. If you want to get the same results everyone else gets, you just simply do the same thing everyone else does, and you'll get the same results. If you want to get better results, well, you got to do something differently. You basically need to experiment or explore or find some other ways. If this is the edge of my comfort zone and I push myself over the edge, of course I'm going to be giving myself grief or experiencing pain. What if I do something radically different? What if I change the direction of my movement, go at 90 degrees in relation to how I used to go? Instead of perpendicular the edge of the comfort zone, I start moving parallel the edge of the comfort zone. This is what I call exploring the edges of the comfort zone. And being mindful obviously is really helpful here because you don't want to push yourself over the edge. Well, the funny thing is that you also will be much more motivated to not push yourself over the edge. And that actually will instigate you to become more mindful. So in a sense, it's a foolproof way to develop greater mindfulness, exploring the edges of our comfort zone. Even if there is pain already, does it mean that we should not explore? No, it doesn't mean that. It actually is an invitation to pay attention and at least wiggle a little bit. So for example, if I feel stiffness in my neck, going back to that same proverbial pain in the neck, right? Well, can I wiggle my head a little bit? Can I turn the head a little bit to the side? Can I go back and forth or up and down? How much of it can I do? Well, however much my limits of the comfort zone allow me to. I don't want to push myself over the edge, but once I find where those limits are, then I actually start moving along the edge. I start moving, exploring what is it like to move along the edge instead of perpendicular to the edge of the comfort zone. You are welcome to do it with me. I want it to be a practical experience instead of just a lecture today. I would invite you to explore the mobility of your neck. Very few people complain about being too flexible in their necks nowadays. We sit in front of computers a lot, even including right here, right now. So we actually often get stiff in our necks. Well, this is an easy and elegant way to start releasing some of this tension. When you're moving, notice how your whole body can get involved. So you don't just keep your torso completely steady and wiggle your head only. I invite you to engage your upper torso, maybe even lower torso and your hips, so that you would experience wiggling throughout your body. Now, that's another really important aspect of what we call harmonious culture movement. It's called integration. Instead of separating or compartmentalizing one particular part of the body and just working on that isolated part, we actually engage in exploring how the entire organism can be involved in this exploration. It's a more holistic approach. And when you do that, something really interesting starts happening. After a few of these repetitions or revolutions, you may start noticing that your breathing and your physical movements start synchronizing. That's right. Breathing is an important Qigong practice, but majority of Qigong teachers tell their students to just breathe right. So they're going to give them some breathing techniques. Even non-Qigong practitioners, for example, I was talking about CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. Those therapists also tell the clients or patients to do some slow breathing for relaxation. Now, if your mind is racing, your central nervous system is agitated, good luck achieving slow and mindful breathing. That's the reason why your breathing is not slow and mindful, is because you're agitated. What do we do instead of trying to fix our breathing? We actually use it as a gauge, the gauge of how much we resonate with something. How much do we resonate with something or someone can actually be not hard to discern if we pay attention to some of the physiological functions that reveal how much resonance we experience. What physiological functions are those? Well, there are a lot of them. Biorhythms, EEG, EKG, just checking your pulse may do it. But there is one function that is constantly happening and it's easy to pay attention to, and that's breathing. If your breathing is stifled and shallow, you're probably stressed. And one of the reasons why you might be stressed is because consciously, or most likely unconsciously, you're focusing on that which you don't resonate with very much. And the more you focus your attention on the things that you don't resonate with, the more you will experience that internal discomfort and stress. And of course, it will manifest somatically in tension and potentially pain. What's the solution? The solution is learning how to recognize that not everything is in perfect resonance with us. Nothing really is. And nothing is in perfect dissonance. There are different degrees of resonance, and we start experimenting, exploring. What does it feel like if I pay attention to this? What if I pay attention to that? Nobody tells you what to pay attention to. You can exercise the freedom of choice. And freedom, for most people, at least living in Western civilization, is the primary value, or one of the top values in their value systems. So I hope you don't mind exercising one of your primary values, the freedom of choice. In this case, it's the freedom of simple choice, what to focus attention on, even inside of your own mind. For example, what do I focus my attention on? Like somebody said something unpleasant to me and it rubbed me wrong, and now I'm reminding myself how pissed off I got. Well, that is going to only add insult to injury. In other words, not only did I get pissed off back then, whenever that happened, but also I keep doing it over and over again and basically making my life a living hell. What's my alternative? Well, it's not like I should never focus on things I don't resonate with, because I will not learn a lot. Those experiences that we don't resonate with are actually the most profound learning opportunities. So we learn how to pay attention to them for as long as we need to in order to learn, but we need to turn our mind or put the learning hat on, switch into the learning state of consciousness. How do you do that? By becoming curious. If you're curious, you are guaranteed to learn more as compared to not being curious. Simple, right? Everything that I teach and practice is actually extremely simple, not always easy, but quite simple. How do you become curious? Well, you actually need to value that which you are about to discover. You may not even know what it is that you're going to discover, but you have a mental attitude of valuing that which you're going to discover. That's what makes you curious. If you don't value your discoveries, the curiosity is going to go out the window very quickly. And without curiosity, you're not going to be able to pay sustained attention. Well, that's one of the definitions of mindfulness, right? The ability to pay sustained attention. That's not all we do about mindfulness. We also learn how to move along the edges of the comfort zone and explore where those edges are. Again, being curious. I wonder how my movement might go if I change, for example, the direction of movement. Or if instead of moving my head first, what if I move my shoulders first? Or what if I let my breathing engage in the movement and lead the movement, something amazing is going to happen. Your physiological function of breathing will synchronize with your physical actions of movement. Well, what do you think that's going to do for you? It's going to create entrainment. Basically, when physical actions and physiological functions work together instead of resisting or contradicting each other, you experience greater sense of wellness and well-being all of a sudden. Instead of breathing and movements contradicting or canceling each other out or making each other more difficult, they actually make each other easier. When it becomes easier to breathe, do you experience greater sense of relaxation in your body? Of course. Why? Because the ease of breathing means the central nervous system doesn't have to send so many signals of contraction to your breathing muscle, your diaphragm, and other muscles involved in breathing. That means the central nervous system becomes less agitated. And we know that less agitated central nervous system will send fewer signals of contraction, not only to the breathing muscles, but to other muscles in your body. In other words, you experience a relaxation response. Damn, it was a long circle to complete this entire methodology that I just shared with you. I don't want to say this is entire methodology of my healing modality of self-healing that I pioneered about 20 years ago, called pain body healing. If you ever heard of the books such as A New Earth or The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, have you heard of Eckhart Tolle? The guy who talks about presence, being in the now? Well, he popularized this term, pain body. Kudos to him for that. I don't know him. I know his wife, Kim Eng. I interviewed her on my show because she's a Qigong teacher. But when I asked Eckhart about pain body and how to heal it, he actually said, well, just be present. And this actually is a little bit too simplistic. As a matter of fact, way too simplistic. If it was that simple, then everybody who's present would not experience any pain body. And we know that's not true, especially if you know Eckhart himself. He's a pretty crooked guy, misaligned in many ways throughout his body. Why? Because there is a lot of tension. Why would a person be riddled with tension? Because they have pain body. If it was that easy to mitigate the pain body by just being present, that would be reflected in that person's physique. And in order to achieve that relaxation, alignment, and release of pain body, I basically developed a whole new methodology or modality of healing. I called it pain body healing. And it actually addresses both psychological, somatic, and energetic components of health. So one of the things that we do is we learn how to heal ourselves. Why? In most modalities of healing, we go to healers who are supposed to fix us or heal us somehow. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. And the reason why is really simple. Most of us heal when and to the degree that we are ready to heal. Let me repeat this again. Most of us heal when and to the degree that we are ready to experience healing. And often we are not ready. For whatever reasons, there may be a number of reasons. These reasons boil down to unconscious strategies for struggling against the flow of life. Oh, now it's really big terminology, right? It's actually really true. Most of us have unconscious strategies for struggling against the flow of things. Sounds like a stupid idea. Who would want to have a strategy for struggling against the flow? We all want to be in the flow, right? Well, unfortunately, these are unconscious strategies. And we often experience some degree of indoctrination, or as I often refer to as domestication, often at such a young age that we did not even think whether or not we want to acquire these strategies. They just got downloaded into our consciousness from our parents or grandparents or other aspects of our bringing, education, religion, and society, and other influencers. And what happened? We basically live our lives stuck, following these unconscious strategies that are not working. Well, they're working in terms of fighting against the flow, but they're not making our lives any easier. In fact, they're making our lives more and more miserable. And the more we're stuck in these particular strategies that we identify with, that's right, the sense of identity, who we think we are, is often wrapped around our dysfunctional strategies. And so it goes way beyond cognitive behavioral therapy, it goes way beyond coaching, as you can imagine. You literally have to unravel and recreate a new sense of identity. And when you discover that you can be a person who is pain-free because you are not engaging in struggle against the flow of things, against the flow of life force in your body and the flow of things in your life, then all of a sudden, or very quickly, you experience healing. And by healing, I mean release of tension, release of pain, experiencing greater quality of life, greater vitality, greater mobility, greater flexibility. Why do you experience greater mobility and flexibility? Because you're less tense. Why are you less tense? Because the central nervous system is not agitated, because you're not in a state of constant stress. Why are you not in stress? Because you're not reacting to life, you're responding to it. So you see, everything that we've covered already dovetails perfectly. We learn how to become more responsive instead of reactive, so that we would become more relaxed on the inside, and then that means that we would become more relaxed on the outside. It's a hermetic principle, as within, so as without. What we learn is how to develop the skill of actually transitioning from the habits of reactivity towards the habits of responsiveness, and then integrating it into our daily lives, and then developing the new sense of identity that would be integrating these new skills and these new habits. And when you bring new habits into your life on a consistent basis, they become your new character, or new identity, if you will. And by forging a new character, you're creating a new destiny. Who wouldn't want that, right? So if you guys are interested in creating a new destiny by using simple and elegant approaches that I already shared with you today, I would love to work with you. If you're the right person for me to work with, which of course we'll have to find out, I would like to offer you an opportunity to experience a complimentary session one-on-one, either with myself or with one of my apprentices. As a matter of fact, Marcia, thank you very much for being here today. Marcia is one of my favorite apprentices, and she is extremely well versed in many of the aspects of our practices. So you're welcome to either email me or email Marcia. You receive my emails, obviously you know how to send email back to me. I received quite a few emails even just since I sent the announcement about today's meeting yesterday. And Marcia is putting something in the chat, right, Marcia? You raised your hand.
I only have so much talent. I can't type and unmute at the same time. Bear with me here.
While Marcia is typing her email address, you know mine. It's lama@tantrapa.org. Now, what's interesting about our exploration today is that we talked about just one primary part of the body that we sometimes experience pain. But does it apply to other parts of the body? Neck is not the only part of the body where pain is possible and likely. Why did I use pain in the neck as an example? One of the reasons is because neck is one of those parts of the body where pain is not idiosyncratic. What does it mean? It means no matter which holding pattern in your body you have, and as long as you have a personality, you probably have a holding pattern in your body, or two, or three. Whatever holding pattern you have, your neck is going to be affected. Whether you're holding down and your neck is kind of stooped over and hunched, or you're holding up and you're extending your neck, or you're holding out and your neck is crooked sideways, or you're holding forth and your neck is sticking your head out forward, or holding back and kind of sucking the head in. Either way, and these are not all holding patterns, of course, there are others, but the idea is that the neck is going to suffer. So it's actually kind of convenient, because when we communicate using Zoom, or I prefer Skype for private sessions, we see each other's heads and upper torsos. Obviously, necks are visible. That's perfect, because we can actually see what's going on with the whole body by just looking at how the head is sitting on the neck and shoulders. That's right. Once you train your eye to be able to tell what's going on with a person's body, even if you don't see the whole body, you can just tell, oh, this person is holding up because the head is like this. And you can tell, for example, that they have tension in their lower back, and they have tension in the hip flexors, they have tension in their quads, and of course they have tension in the neck, and so on. And it corresponds to certain states of consciousness. Well, what state of consciousness do you think I should be if I'm holding myself this way? Well, that's going to be your koan, the Zen-like question that perhaps you'll have to figure out on your own.
I wanted to just reflect a little bit on some of the things you've already shared, if I can do that.
Please.
We were talking about pain and its origin, and I had this thought that, and Lama alluded to this, that pain is not just something that we experience in our body, but we could also describe the way we think our ways through life. Some of that thinking process could be described as painful. When a person is in an agitated, manic state, they're not thinking well. And so, careful with the labeling, but it can be painful to watch somebody who is struggling in their thought processes. And if you've ever been there where your own thought processes were erratic and not producing a desired result, you can recognize that that is a correlation to pain. So that makes me also think of that state of becoming aware, like really taking the time to notice what's happening inside of my body proper and my mind proper, and am I using it in a way that is to my own best advantage? Or am I, and here's another term that I saw, am I tolerating the tensions of life? And what Lama was talking about, of there's a habitual way that we respond to things. If you get to the place of tolerance of pain, there is actually a terminology for that, or research that shows, like if you put your fingernail in the back of your hand really hard, at first it hurts, but if you leave it there for a long period of time, your brain just says, okay, that's there, turn it off. It's not that the source went away, but your brain starts to tolerate what's there and you quit noticing it. So that happens as we flow through life as well. There are these painful circumstances and situations that catch our thoughts. And at first they're irritating, and then they start to habituate, and we just accept them as that's the way it is. And we don't look for, how can I relieve that? When you look out at somebody and you notice and I certainly have discovered this about myself in the years, that they're shallow breather. Like, what is that tension up here? That can easily be a reflection of that habituated reaction to something undesired. We'll call that pain, okay? Either in the thought mechanism or in the body mechanism. you can actually see that the body is reflecting back at you the habitual patterns that we have. Lama's talking about holding patterns, and then recognize, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that, because it has habituated. We have just accepted that's the way that stimulus is going to be, as opposed to beginning that phase of being curious and exploring what's going on that my breathing is so shallow, or what's going on that my shoulder seems to always be stiff, or my neck not very limber. Like, we just kind of tolerate that stuff. When he talked about exploring the edge of your comfort zone, I had this thought. Exploring implies taking control of a process. And I would assume that if I'm exploring the edge of something that I think might be painful, I will explore gently. I will explore slowly, so I have some control over the reaction. I think what happens often in life, though, is yes, we do have a comfort zone, or the edge of our ability to function without excessive stress, right, and tension. And what happens is we just blast through it. Something happens in our world to challenge us, and we just charge into the moment and experience a reaction that, like, I didn't like that, whether it's a conversation with another human being and you get a reaction from them that was not enjoyable, or it is something you do with your body. Like, I had to learn that it was probably not in my best interest to try and carry 8 bags of grocery into the house at one time, because I was being lazy and didn't want to make 5 or 6 trips. That sudden, attempt to try and carry what was probably 100 pounds caused a reaction in my body that it might have even taken days for the muscles to say, okay, this is how we're going to deal with that. Okay. Tension set in, and it set in days later. So noticing that our comfort zone is something that's always there, you refer to it as your threshold of tolerance or your comfort zone, and that we can approach it consciously, slowly, and intentionally, or what often happens is we step over it unconsciously and then suffer this interesting reaction that the body will build a memory about your having done that, and it becomes a part of that automatic survival mechanism that says, don't do that again. So if you notice in your life, you have these places that you get stopped. I'm suggesting that at some point in your life, you blasted through a comfort zone in that moment, and your brain put up a barrier that said, don't do that. And it becomes a habit of limiting the way we use our life, our body, to prevent the experience of pain on any level. Right? And then we look up one day and our lives are very stiff and limited, and we wonder why we don't have that definition of I feel healthy going on. Back to the final suggestion of become curious and begin to explore, what am I really doing with my thoughts and my body? As I consciously explore that, then I can see consciously what is the source of this resistance and discomfort. And I can then put attention to it consciously, as opposed to inadvertently, right? And have some power in the process of healing. And I'll share my own personal experience. I made a commitment a year ago that health was going to become my primary focus. And the universe said, okay, deal with this. Over and over and over again, my exploration has brought attention to things in my body, things in my mind that really did. They had lived in that world of being habituated to the point I was ignoring them. And when I said, I'm going to pay attention, they jumped right up and said, pay attention to this. A part of me says, why did I do that? Another part of me says, you're lucky you did it when you did. So I'm encouraging everybody to take on this exercise of being particularly mindful to your own well-being by finding that gauge of where are you in it, and being curious and observant and exploring and finding those places where your habits have gone unconscious so that you can bring it back to the conscious level and be mindful of your power to create your own health. You've got it, so might as well use it. Okay, that's me. I'm done.
That was beautifully said. And I appreciate you sharing some of your personal experience with it as well, because I think you are an excellent manifestation of exactly this process.
I think today's lecture was wonderful. And because it just flowed so nicely, I'm going to make the commitment to turn it into an ebook for everyone. It'll take a short period of time to do that, but I'm going to ask you all to be patient and look for an announcement in your emails that this session has been turned into an ebook. It may come to you free. It may be a really low level offer, like less than $5, something like that. Depends on, how we connect it. But thank you for being a part of it, because your good listening gave a space for a good lecture to show up in. So thank you, and keep your eye out.
Brilliant idea, Marcia, as always. And I've introduced different aspects of pain body healing on many other occasions. So perhaps we can combine several of those presentations into a nice compendium. Yeah, this is a fantastic thing. I'm afraid that it probably will have to wait after the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day, which is going to be happening on April 29th. And we're going to be organizing the summit of Qigong and Tai Chi teachers and masters. And I will be making an announcement about it in about a couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks. We basically will be organizing the summit to celebrate our professional holiday, and also to share some alternative approaches. Different masters have different ways of doing things. I don't want to say that my ways of doing things are the only ways. So we're going to play and experiment and explore with a variety of different approaches. And last but not least, I also mentioned in my recent email that there would be an announcement of a scholarship. Now, what's the scholarship? Academy of Qidao, which is the school that I opened in the year 2000, is dedicated to training people in the basic, intermediate, and advanced levels of energy arts. Now, some of you folks may have already substantial background under your belt, so to speak, in a variety of other arts. If you've never gone through the basic Qidao program, you will definitely benefit from it. And it is something that is going to build a really solid foundation for any other energy arts practices, Tai Chi practices, any practices that you may think of that would be related to Qigong. And even if you have many years of practice under a belt, as I said, it still will be essential to go through the basic program, because it will actually blow out of the water, so to speak. Some of the techniques and approaches that we will be looking at, like I was mentioning today, for example, breathing practices. Instead of teaching you how to breathe right, I would much rather help you discover for yourself what you need to focus your attention on, and how you may need to reorient your consciousness in such a way that you would experience less stress because you become more responsive than reactive. And then the natural breathing starts flowing spontaneously. And what could be healthier than being natural? So that's literally a much more elegant and effective approach to breathing. This is something that is fundamental. It's actually going to transform both the relationship with how you breathe and also give you a much more precise tool for assessing how well you resonate with something or someone. And using the tool, you'll be able to develop discernment. I hope you don't mind that. So, as I mentioned, we are launching a scholarship contest. So I will be sending out an email with the links to the webpage where the scholarship contest is going to be held. We're going to start a contest next week. So please be on the lookout for a new email from me in a few days, in a week. And I will look forward to seeing your applications. And we're going to have some serious fun. This contest, number one prize will be the complete 100% free ride for the basic Qidao program. It's literally going to be a $2,500 discount from our tuition. I've never done it before, so this is going to be the first time to offer complete free ride. And if somebody wins it, wonderful. And also there's going to be second and third prizes. So there's going to be 2 second prizes, and they're going to be 50% discounts from the scholarship. So again, over $1,000 a gift for winning the contest. And number 3, third prize will be 25% discount. Still a very generous, over $500 discount off of our tuition. That is going to give you an opportunity to experience the basic Qidao program, which will be starting at the end of this month, and it will go for 3 months. And during this program, you'll be receiving coaching. That's right. As I pioneered the profession of Qigong coaching, guess what? We do coaching in the context of our programs. And you'll be receiving it. Plus also, you will receive access to the online materials that will be provided to you, taking you by the hand and taking step by step the journey along the path of exploring Qidao. And last but not least, you will also receive a ticket to the weekend workshop. At the end of the program, we'll have a live event in Portland, Oregon. So I basically consider that this is the most important part of the program, even though it's only 2 days, but it's as important or even more important than the 3 previous months of the program. And you will receive a certificate as a basic Qidao practitioner. So not only will you be able to learn this for your own benefits, but you also will be certified to offer the basic Qidao practices and principles to other people in your community or people you care about, or perhaps your students. So this is something that I would certainly encourage you to do. I will look forward to seeing in our next Qigong coaching clinic in a couple of weeks. Until then, namaste.